I just got done reading Dr. Jean Twingy's book Generations, and she's out at San Diego State. She's a generational researcher. A lot of the I got introduced to her first through Growing Leaders because they really rely on a lot of her research for their work. In this book, Generations, and it's a deep dive, and it's very very data heavy. Like the amount of graphs in there might equal like one graph to every 10 words, but she basically unpacks starting with the silent generation, then boomers, then Gen X, then the millennials, then Gen Z, and then she even gets into she calls them polars. Some people call them alphas. They're the 12 and under. They're a next generational cohort. There's not an agreement on the name quite yet. I don't think. I don't like polars. It's referring to how polarized we are, by the way.
Yeah, but also bipolar, and this
Right.
is some
Well,
pretty
and the
negative
polarized
connotation.
caps. Right. There's just so many things. I don't like it. Alpha could be negative, but alpha follows Z, whatever. But the name aside, she takes us through all those generations. And the thing that really stuck out to me that she sort of unpacks, but not fully, and she's not talking about athletics at all. But I thought about it from my vantage point is how much with each generation we have drifted from collective to individual. And she's very clear to say, and I agree with her, it's not good or bad. Individualism is not good or bad. It is what it is. But when you're trying to lead a team to perform so that you're better than the sum of the parts, how individualistic we are, and to the point where we all have our own screens, our own entertainment, our own facts, right? Um, when I talk about that collective to individual, and your career spans, I mean, what tell me, like, just tell people in case they don't know the great Laurie Glass. Like, I know I'm going to make you be uncomfortable, but like, talk about your career. Like, it spanned a lot of years. I don't know, because I know you left and came back. Just talk about that.
Yeah, I think um, so. My career actually started in '76 as a player, right? But as a coach, I started the year after. Well, I've coached in Kalamazoo before that, so it would have been in the mid '80s, uh, early to mid '80s, where I coached at Kalamazoo Central under Gene Hess. At the time, I was the JV coach first, and then I was the varsity coach, and then I in a league that included the great Jack Mogelson
At
at
Portage
Portage
Northern.
Northern.
Yeah.
So I was there at that time, and then started up here in North in like '89, and then was at Central from '90 to '94, and then back at Leland from '95 to 2006, and then off from 2006 to 2009, and then back until 2023 when I retired.
You only left for 3 years. I for whatever reason, I thought it was longer than that, but you just left when you needed to when Alicia was with the national team, correct?
I left when she was at Penn State.
Right. But I thought you were gone longer than that, and it went into her
No, because they didn't
position.
actually switch the season the first year, so I didn't have to quit that first year. We were in the wrong
Right.
season then.
Yep.
There was one more year after she graduated that it was not interfering,
Yep. Okay.
because she would have been playing in the fall and I would have been coaching starting in November, December. So it didn't interfere. And then when they did switch, then I was out for the 3 years that she was at Penn State.
And then when she went to Rio, that was in August, you just were
That was 2016.
right. And you were
So I was
coaching.
back 2010. I was still coaching then.
Okay.
They just Trav covered for me
Okay.
while I went out to the Olympics.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. And just for the people, like, we're talking, I don't know what, 14,000 wins. What's your? I know you don't care, but I'm gonna
Nope,
say
I
it.
don't know, and I don't care.
You come on, it's like
I
1,100.
really don't know. It's 1,400 maybe. 1,200 somewhere in there.
Yeah, okay, I know it's over. I know it's north of
Over 1,000
1,100.
for sure.
Okay, for sure, I knew that wins, and that's there's a lot of lessons in those wins because there's some
There's a
losses
ball
too.
at home that's got the actual number on it that they gave me when I retired, but that's how much attention it's in a room that nobody goes in. So it is on that plaque. So if somebody actually needed to know, I could go to the plaque and find out what it was, but I don't
That's
generally know.
amazing. Um, yeah, that's so there's so many lessons in that. So, okay, now let's go back to collective versus individualistic because I think there's a tension there and it's gotten we talk about generational, development and all those things, but I think that and power over in the power shift and all that stuff. But I think a big tension that I wanted to name truly is coaches trying to in a it's almost counterculture to be for the team first. And I think that that's a area that you definitely excel in. And I just wondered if I could get you to vamp on that a little bit. I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Clarify me, coaches for the team first.
Like, we before me,
Okay.
like, putting their team above their self-interest. Because I think if you're talking about how individualistic, each generation has gotten a little bit more individualistic. And again, I'm not trying to say that in a negative way. It just is the stats support that. I think that there is something to be said that it's become a heavier lift to get young people and their parents to buy into I might not get the position I want. I might not get the playing time I want. I might not whatever, but I'm still going to be full hearted for the team. And if you, what are your thoughts on that? Did you feel that? I mean, you're from a pretty small area, but like, just what do you think?
Yeah, so right, the challenge is always, I mean, I could say that I've lived all those generational shifts, and I think the struggle, I think, as a coach is that I have had to, it's in the moments in which I chose not to change that caused me the biggest difficulties. And when I have former players come to see me or see me coach, and they're like, dude, coach, you never, what is that? You would never, whatever. And I was like, yeah, but you could handle that. You, that worked for you. Like I had to be that for you. But if I were that for these guys, they wouldn't play. Like that doesn't make them wrong. It's only wrong if I decide that there's something wrong with them and that therefore they're the ones to blame, and I can already have ready-made excuses of why there's not success because kids these days, that whole idea about that seems non-productive to me. Like as somebody who spent a lifetime trying to pick the lock all the time of the 12 kids that are standing before me, um, I think that was important. No matter which kind of kid was standing in front of me, I still had to pick the lock. I couldn't say, this is what I always do, therefore you always will. I mean, there's some fundamentals, some sound beliefs about, I believe you're capable of more than you think you're capable of. And my job is just to spend my time convincing you that you believe that. Like that's the job, right? Like, why is my little tiny small town group of kids where it's whoever can play gets to play? And how are they competing with people who are picking from 800 kids in a school, and I've got less or just over 100 total, let alone girls. And why are we winning? Because my kids don't believe they shouldn't be winning. They just don't. It never crosses their mind that they shouldn't be. And so we go into we just beat it out. It's one of the reasons why I left Leland to go to Traverse City, because I didn't understand. Traverse City at the time was the biggest high school in the state of Michigan. Like there was only one, and it was 3,000 plus kids. It was like huge, and I didn't understand why we were winning. I thought, what would happen if I got that kind of group of kids, right? Like if I could have my pick, could I make a difference, and would that stop happening? And I saw it as a challenge, sort of in my youth, of this doesn't make any sense to me. And I went there, and by the time we left, we were ranked fifth in Division One, right? Like, but it was a long time of converting. It was 4 years of really trying to convince people that that this idea of actually we over me back then was in a school where you're competing for everything. Like in Leland, you just show up at a meeting and raise your hand and you get to play. Like that's a thing. You go there, you're competing for band, you're competing for AP English, you're competing for, you're in competition all the time. And so I had to convince that group of competing people how that together we might be able to compete with other people. But if we were in constant competition with each other, that it wasn't going to go very well. So I sort of proved my point and was missing my kid, and then went back to Leland. It's like sort of that's how that all went. But that was the motivating factor of why I left.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's so interesting to learn. There's so many things that you just said that I want to dive into. So like, first of all, can I just repeat it? Pick the lock of the 12 kids standing before me. That is, oof, that's a pull quote for sure. And then the other thing I want to say, like, you started off in the moments I chose not to change. That is more profound than I think because honestly, it's probably in the work that I'm doing now with my consulting hat and trying to help coaches develop and as I work with their teams. I didn't know it until you just gave me the words for it. But when I talk about really enjoying my work with some coaches over others, that's it. That's the statement. Is there are coaches that I work with who just they just choose they can't change. Like they just no matter what. And the coaches who are like, I'm thinking of one specifically that we talked about, before we get on, that I'm just like, I just love working with this coach. And it's because I'm not even trying to prompt anything, but out of the feedback that I offer, that coach is like, yeah, I could do better at that. What? Like that, the appreciation and the love I have for working with people like that is so huge. And I've, obviously that we've had lots of conversations and you're one of those people. So I guess my question is, and then the other thing, I have a question that I know coaches are going to have about how do you get people to raise their standards when they can just show up and be there? Because I can't tell you the amount of coaches that are from smaller schools that say, well, I can't have cuts, so we can't be good. No, that's not true. And I like you're the perfect test case because what you just said to like talk about that. But can you talk about that choosing to change? How do you find your blind spots? Because I think there's so often, sometimes coaches are just stubborn, but sometimes they just can't get to a place where they see their blind spots.
Well, I mean, it comes from the basic belief that I have blind spots. Like, I basically believe that other people or other things or other knowledge can help me. I don't feel like I'm the one with all the answers, number one. And number two, I'm open to the possibility. And number three, I think inherently, I believe that if I can do something different myself, it's easier than getting the 12 people I have in front of me doing something different all at the same time. So when I say pick the lock, it's not like how can I get them to do what I'm saying? It's about how can I say something different so they get what they need in the moment. Like, how can I do something different? Like, well, that didn't work. I mean, the number of times I've called really important people in my life and said, oh my God, I can't say this one more time this way. Like, I I don't have it. I please, and they're like, yeah, and they just pop off a bunch of things, and I think, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or oh, that's a thought that I'm gonna give a shot at, or gosh, I don't know more. I don't understand that. The number of times I picked your brains in the moment and said like, I can, and you're like, I don't think that's what they're saying, Laurie, and I'm like, well, and you're like, no, and I'm like, well, and you're like, right? So like, we have lots of those conversations, and I do that with lots of people. Clearly, I do it with my daughter a lot. Um, Tia and a bunch of other people Jean, lots of people that I feel are successful. I think I feel about it the same way I feel about when I tell an athlete walking into a big practice gym or a big competition place where they're going to play with people they don't really know. I always say, find the best people.
Hmm.
Find the best people and partner with the best people, not because you're the best people, but because you're going to get better by being with people that are better than you, right? So I try to watch coaches coach. I try to watch decisions that are being made. I try to show up in a gym and watch a practice. I try to watch a YouTube video to see, how they're addressing that issue, or read a book, or, you know, look at my own stuff, right? Because I feel like that's so much easier. I don't know why I feel like that's so much easier. I feel like that's just so much easier than trying to make them fit a mold that they, I don't know.
It's
I feel
certainly
like that's easier.
it's pragmatic. Like, I'm giggling at the number three because it's what a pragmatic answer. It just seems easier to fix like or change what I'm doing than try to like get these 12 people to do it. So, I mean, pragmatically, that makes a lot of logical sense. I love that answer for that reason. Um, I want to ask. So you said there's kind of three things. You come from the basic belief that you have blind spots, and then you're open to the possibility, and you didn't finish it. And so I just want to make sure, like, did you mean like open to the possibility that you're wrong? Is that
Yeah,
what the
I'm
end of
open
that
to the
sentence is?
possibility that somebody else has a better answer, or somebody, it doesn't even, for me, it doesn't necessarily come from a volleyball coach. I would say to you that I had similar conversations with my father just about coaching, and he's a basketball coach, right? Like, I don't, when I talk to coaches, local coaches who aren't my sports, I think there's a lot of crossovers about coaching kids that are universal and that can help. So I'm a thief for sure. Um, I'm curious also, and I'm convicted about doing the right thing for the right reasons. Like I'm convicted about that.
I
I
just found the
just don't
title.
always know what the right things are.
I just found the title for this little short missive that we're making. The Curious Convicted Thief, Laurie
Yes,
Glass.
that's
That's
me.
that's it. That's
Yeah,
I
there
love
you
it
go.
so much. Well, and I think that's the art of it, right? That's the experimentation behind it. Something that you said when you were talking about the picking the lock. I saw like a reel or something that somebody put together of Nick Saban talking about manipulation and coaching. And, we think of the word manipulation as a negative. And he said, the way that he talked about it, and I'm totally paraphrasing, I'm going to get this wrong, but the general gist is basically as coaches, we sort of manipulate. Are you manipulating for your own purpose or for theirs? And I think that that's such an important distinction, and why I think that really early on, before I knew how many timeouts you got in volleyball, right? Because for a long time I had no idea what the hell was going on, and that that's true. Like I was like, I don't, what is life? 6'2", yeah, 8 players, I'm in. Let's do that. Um, but I remember really early on going, like, just in my own brain going, there are two types of coaches: coaches who know that it's not about them, and coaches who think it's about them. And that was my first like binary thought. And obviously there's nuance, but that's a little bit when you're talking about picking the lock, kind of what I hear you say. Like, there is manipulation is such a possibly bad word. I don't mean that, but like, are you doing it for them? And that is what I hear you say when you're describing the picking of the lock.
Yeah, I mean, is it manipulation when I think to myself, man, I've said, I mean, I guess you could boil it all down to this very simple concept. If I say to a kid, "Hey, I want you to move your feet to the ball," and they don't. And then I say, "Hey, I want you to move your feet to the ball," and they don't. But I really want you to move your feet to the ball, right? Like that is me coaching from my point of view. I only have one way to say it, and you're not getting it, so that says something about you. You're not going to be any good because I clearly have said it. I couldn't be more clear about it. I'm giving you the words. If you just do it, you'd be fine. Or I'm going to be the other person that maybe is manipulative, and I'm going to say, hey, so I want your feet to get there before the ball gets there. Like I want them to be fast. Like I don't even want you to pass the ball right now. I just want your feet to get there before. When you see the ball, get your feet there first. See which one's in the wind, and we're just going to judge that. We're going to do that, and then they try it differently, right? They make a different change. Maybe it's not the one I want, but it's a step in the right direction. Is that manipulation? Have I judged that kid to be lacking? No. What I said, how I said, didn't work. That's not their problem. That's my problem.
Yes.
The problem is I have to say it in a way they can hear it. And that's the same way about confidence, or that's the same way about negative self-talk. It's the same thing. If I say to a kid, hey, look, I believe in you. You just have to be confident out there. Clearly, if one could do that, it all would be great in the world, right? But that isn't useful information, right? Or, hey, let's get a good pass. So useful, right? So helpful. Uh, that's just talking to be talking, right?
Yep.
And then people stop listening because you're not really giving them important information. I get off the topic, sort of on a bird dog there, but I think that's what I'm talking about with picking the lock. And if you want to call it manipulation, fine. I'm a master manipulator. Great.
But
Right.
for them, I think it's really important. Like,
Yeah.
I think that matters. I think that, and again, that word is so loaded, so I hesitate to use it. But when he kind of laid it out like that, I was like, he's not wrong, and you're right. Like, it's just figuring out how. But I think the energy behind it is everything.
Yeah.
The energy, it's for you, so you can be better, so the team can be better. It's not for me and my ego. Because what you said there, when you said it's not their problem if they don't understand me, it's my problem. The way that I've kind of approached that in the past is, and so often we've normalized just screaming at kids, and it's our shame spilling out because we make it their problem that we can't explain to them what we want them to do.
Yeah.
That
Well,
is
I
a
go in so
huge
far
thing.
as to say, hey, I clearly am not doing a very good job right now. Like I've said those
Yep.
words to kids.
Same.
Like I'm trying to say this the same way, and I hear myself repeating, and that can't be helpful to you, and I'm looking for another way to say it. Anybody got another thought about whatever? And then somebody will add their 2 cents in, and all of a sudden a light bulb will go off, or I'll do something stupid and say something completely off the wall, and they'll go, oh, bingo. I mean, for example, I coached middle school basketball. Could not get this group of kids and this one particular girl to understand what it meant. Middle school, to defend, you have to be able to guard somebody else. You have to guard your girl, but you also have to notice the other people might come into your way, and you have to do something about it. I could not explain that concept anyway. I found out the girl read a lot of books, and she was interested in a lot of fairy tale sort of stories. And I said, hey, look, the key is the castle. And the only way the princess who's up in the basket can get hurt or kidnapped is if you let somebody in the castle, anybody in the castle. So you got to keep track of your men, but anybody else getting in the castle is, oh, not okay. And bam, best help side defense you ever want to see in a million years. That made perfect sense to her. I told an entire story about a queen and a princess and a thing, and we said it, and it, like, she had it right. I could have said she'll never play basketball and she'll never be any good at this, and you're whatever. But I thought, I've said that, so that's not working. Let me say this in this way,
That
and
is
then
amazing.
being willing to sort of do that all the time. I think that's what makes good coaches. But that
Well,
was
and it's so fun. And that's why, I talk about coaching is a creative endeavor. It just is. It's painting a picture. And I think the more we can think about it that way, I think it helps us in so many different areas, including with parents, right? Including with, something that I'd love to jump to next, the idea of playing time, because it's just creative. And also, and this is something that I'm trying to get coaches or parents, especially, and administrators and student athletes to understand, because it's a creative endeavor, fear kills creativity. And when you make it unsafe for coaches to push players, you are absolutely promising that your team is going to be limited in its potential, because we're human. And if you try to get your coach in trouble by going around them, or the parent is always like attacking the coach or whatever, it can be really hard for that coach to lead your kid, right? Because it's a creative process, and you just described the creativity. How fun is that? That's why I love coaching. um yeah, that's so good.
Parents
Okay,
is it's a whole different thing. Like that could be a
we say that
whole.
again.
I said parents would be a whole different thing. I would say that I've had to be pretty creative as it relates to them too, but probably even more concrete with parents, um, with like backup for it, right?
Yep.
So it was really important to me that everybody gets a kid to develop so that by the time they got to me, everybody got all the chances. And now they're on the varsity, we're playing to win, and 12 people are involved in the action to win. Like all 12 of us are engaged in that activity. Starters, non-starters, whatever the role that you're playing, right? That's an important piece. That's my job to make that happen at that end. But I think I'll go way off on a tangent here and tell you that I think our mistakes are being happening in middle school and JV levels about what our focus is and what our intention is. When a school board had me come talk to them about parents being upset that the best kids are getting punished by not playing them. They work really hard and they play all this travel and they do all this stuff and they put it and they're really good. And because they have to share time, they're hampered by their shared time for other people. And so I had two stories for them about that, and parents were sitting in the room as well. I said, look, I had one kid in middle school who couldn't walk and chew gum, and I mean couldn't walk and chew gum. And God love her, she believed in it, she stayed in it, she wanted to be all the things. And her dad said to me, look, you like, and her sister or her mother said, I need to know if she needs to be joining the sewing circle. Like, don't put us through this if this isn't a thing. I said, look, I think she's going to be fine. We just got to give her space to find whatever, and she's going to work hard and she's going to do all this thing. Ends up being an all-state player, goes on and plays in college, and it makes all conference for a college, right? And had I decided middle school that she didn't deserve the time because she wasn't developmentally where the other kids were at that time, I would have missed out. She would have missed out, and all the things, right? And then I'll go the other side and say, I have an Alicia who plays middle school, who's already playing for the United States development program as an eighth grader on a team with, I think there were 20 some kids. It was crazy. Big class, giant thing. All the girls came out. And I could have put Alicia on the end line, had her serve. She would have served 15 points, 25 points. Like it would have been over. It would have been over. Somebody might have gotten hurt, whatever. And somebody said to me, yeah, but didn't that cost her? And I said, no, because she spent the time learning to take care of her teammates. She found a way to make other people love the sport she loved as much as she did, because if it had been the show, they might have been resentful. And in a small school like this, she's going to get to the end line and have nobody to play with because it's all about her. So
Listen,
many things, right?
I
Two
would.
stories, two exact opposite stories in a middle school program that had fundamental beliefs that said
Yeah.
all kids are valued and the process is more important than the outcome. Both kids achieved at the highest levels both kids could achieve.
Yeah, the nuance. We're so binary in so many categories, right? And the nuance that you just described is what is missing for sure, in being really clear about what the objective is. So, and I would just go one step further with Alicia and say that we know, based on who's been, on our national team, or just even following her from a setting perspective, how much what you just described probably served her in her career, right?
Yeah, for sure.
She was a part of a team who didn't lose a set into the Final Four and won a national championship after that. She was our national team, and we know that since then those teammate skills have not always appeared in the possible setters for our national team at their detriment. So I would argue that that actually assisted her in her big career, like in her big time career, like
For
after
sure.
high school, right?
For sure.
Um, okay, so but when you get to high school, and I do have a hard stop at unfortunately, but I want to keep on this trail. When you do get to the varsity level, what I'm finding is that we have to be super clear about playing time is not a reward. And I had 50 kids in the room, and I knew this was an issue for them. And so it came up after I did the whole basis of what culture is and all that stuff. And I said, "You're the coach. Get in a group of 3 and tell me their criteria to determine playing time." And Laurie, the answers that I got were so telling. It was people who work hard. If you show up for all the practices, it was all these things. And I'm like, okay, let's pretend the scoreboard is on and all of the DSs are the only ones that meet that criteria. Is that who starts? And they were like, well, no, you got to take it. And I'm like, go back to the drawing board. And I just kept playing that out to the point where I was like, listen, the rewards are many. You're not going to feel many of them until you're 40, but playing time is never one of them. And
Nope.
so, can you tell me, because there are coaches out there who listen to you say, all these things are like, yeah, but I can't make cuts or blah, blah, blah. In Leland, where if you raise your hand, you're going to be on the team and you won 5 million games. How do you go about instilling that and raising the standards when you can't have and I know the answer, but I want them to hear it from you. Go ahead and talk about how you do that without punishment or being able to cut people or whatever. How do you facilitate that?
Well, I start being responsible for the program from middle school on. So I hire people and get people in the room that believe the same thing as I do. Number one. Number two, I have a very specific guidelines for 7th and 8th grade volleyball. Middle school volleyball is this: everybody plays every rotation equally all the way around. We rotate. Everybody goes in. It's a thing. Nobody sits more than anybody else. No decisions are made based on skill. 8th grade level, I do a little bit of specialization of the setters just because we have to start developing that. JV, we divide them into 2 different teams if I've got enough kids. I divide them into, and equal teams, not one good team, one bad team, or mediocre team. 2 equal teams that if they played each other, they'd split a lot. Right. And everybody gets their thing. First one plays first set, second set. If we have a third set, it rotates the whatever. And everybody gets a free shot. And I say this in the parent meeting from get-go. Everybody's going to get a shot. And when you get to me, we're playing the best 6 players on the floor in order to get the win. And that means that's my job, and it's not open to speculation and it's not open to opinion. That's what they hired me to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And if any of your kids want to know about playing time, I will have that conversation with them till the cows come home. Here's how you can get more playing time. This is the improvements you need to make. This is the person you're competing with. You have to be able to pass the ball to target better than XYZ. That number has to, whatever that is, whatever the criteria that I have with that kid, you got to manage stressful situations. You got to be able to handle from point 20 to 25. Whatever that is, that kid's going to 100% know because I'm in practice with them every day and I'm with every game and every single thing that they do, I'm aware of. You get to say nothing to me about playing time. Ever. Ever. Period. End of sentence. Done.
Have you ever, this is a final note, and then we're going to have to obviously come back and just do this every other week. That's what I think. Have you ever had, and obviously in a small town and you've been there and you're like a big part of the community. And so I'm assuming the administration is really important in that, but have you had ever parents go, screw that rule, you're wrong, and I'm going to go above your head?
I've had it not particularly about that particular rule, but I've had parents try to circumvent the situation, and frankly, what happens is it develops a lack of trust.
Exactly.
it puts a negative stuff in there. Like I spell out in my parent meeting, hey, look, you have to come to me first, and it has to be at an appropriate time or place. And then it's you, me, and the athletic director. And then it's you, me, the athletic director, and the principal. And then it's you, me, the athletic director, principal, and superintendent. And then if we all need to go to the school board, we can all go to the school board. But none of those meetings don't include me.
Love that.
And I do the same thing. I take the meeting for the JV coaches, and I take the same meetings for the middle school coaches if they're an issue, because it's programmatically on my shoulders.
And so
And I fought battles, right? Like it's not like I have not fought battles.
what I'm hearing, and this is the what I'll leave us with, and we can come back to this because I talk about this concept all the time. You're describing really, really sturdy guardrails. Like you have guardrails, and they're very clear, and they're made of steel, and that allows everything becomes easier. It's when you get wishy-washy or make an exception or whatever. Alicia played in the flipping Olympics, and you didn't make an exception at the 7th grade level for her. And that, I think that consistency and in being true, you can't say we're about development and then get somebody who's a future national team player and let them do whatever. Like you can't do
No,
that.
and when the message was loud to Alicia in terms of the value of the people around her, and it was loud to everybody else that I don't value other people above them. Like it established a sense of good with them as well. Like, no, she's really serious when she says what she values. And it's the same for rule breakers, right?
Nope.
Rule breakers are rule breakers are rule breakers. I don't care if I lose or win the game or not. It is the way it go, and that's going to cost us, oh well.
Yep.
And once they get that feeling of security, knowing that it is going to be what it is going to be, what it is going to be, then they have the ability to just grow and be and challenge and risk in ways that are important.
Love it. Love it. Ah, this was fun. All right, we're going to do this again. And we'll just keep playing in the sandbox of coaching talks, and we're going to find fun, creative ways to do stuff together because I love thinking partnering with you. It's really fun.
I love it too. It's my favorite.